14 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
This is News Talk.
Yeah, your bill, come along. It's Tuesday evening's show, Pat Nevin on the football show after 9 o'clock. We have Aidan O'Shea in studio this evening for you. He's heading for Intercounty year number 12, so we'll have a chat to him about life now again under James Horan. Enda McGinley and Declan Bogle are going to join us around 7:30, talk about violence in the GAA, which has really cropped up again over the last couple of weeks. 53106 is the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Ronan Mullen is here, Richie McCormick is here, and Johnny Ward's here. Johnny.
How are you, Joe?
Johnny.
It's like a back four here, isn't it?
It really is.
If we were a Premier League back four, what would we be Cardiff or?
Well, I mean, we're curious in that me and Richie are at fullbacks and you two are, I would say, physically unimposing pair of centre halves.
The ball-playing centre half, Johnny, I think.
In your head, anyway.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one.
I'm not sure if me and Richie have enough pace out wide here as
Zero
fullbacks.
pace on this side.
No, we'll be tucking in and pulling the wingers back with us. So we'll talk to Enda McGinley and Declan Bogle around 7:30. I'm sure people have seen the spate of videos recently with GAA brawls kicking off, including players. The Ballyholland Downpatrick one spilled over into the stands, or certainly behind the goal, and there were fans involved and officials involved, and a right mess. The Slotneil Ballinderry one was pretty grim as well. The video, that's not great. The crowd in the Slotneil Ballinderry one are fairly horrified and they're screaming, and there's a lot of venom there. The Ballyholland Downpatrick one, the crowd are kind of saying, here we go again.
That's the problem, isn't it? That tolerance, and
Yeah.
I think it's been a black mark against Gaelic football in particular, and to a lesser extent hurling, but certainly Gaelic football, just this nonsense of brawls and stuff going on off the ball that has nothing to do with the skills of the game. It's all about machoism, and was one of the former Armagh players, I can't think of his name at the moment, but he was bringing up how with this gym culture now, it's really making it so much worse, that they're going about with this kind of haughty manner of I'm a gym freak and I can get involved in this, but you're nearly expecting it now every weekend at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to know if we're just seeing more of it because everybody has a phone now and everybody has WhatsApp, or actually if it's happening more regularly. I suspect it's happening about as much as it always has, and we're just in a certain spate of them and we're seeing them. But it's very hard to tell for sure. I guess you'd have to trawl through referee match reports over the last number of decades, but it's certainly been a feature for a long time.
But if anything, you can almost take that as a positive, because this stuff is being brought to light in a way it probably wouldn't have been over decades past, and in one sense, if it does lead to some sort of recourse, it could prove a positive thing.
I was reading Colin Keys had a piece in 2013 just to show that this problem is as old as time in the GAA, and he was talking about where they were, and he was harking back to 07, where there was a load of flashpoints. Nicky Brennan had summoned all the counties into Croke Park because one of the big images from 07 was a Westmeath referee who was lying on his back on the pitch after an incident, and all the players around him were continuing to fight, and there was a sense that we can't have this. This has just gone too far. 2010, Willie Barrett, the referee, a hurling match, someone ran on and struck him twice in the back. Antrim referee Ray Matthews in 2011 was hospitalised after an under-21 game in Antrim. 2 Donegal players hospitalised in 2012. There was a Waterford match, Ballygunner and Rowan Moore, which involved almost every player. So this thing is just ticking along for decades.
There's people who should know better as well. I'm thinking of when I was playing as a nipper, how some of the parents were so energised, to put it mildly, in the sideline, but it's nothing short of scandalous what referees have to put up with in Gaelic games. I think it's not a particularly well-paid job, it's not an attractive job, it's a seriously difficult job in the modern age, with a tackle that is still, if not ill-defined, a little bit open to interpretation, notwithstanding all this nonsense, and then a lack of respect on top of it, and the tolerance of that is disgusting, I think.
And people have raised there's a certain hypocrisy going on when county boards will hand out suspensions to club players, and then the same week, if their county team has been involved in an incident, like people mentioned that Tyrone Armagh under-20 game, they'll appeal all those suspensions as well. So on the one hand, they're dishing it out to clubs, but then they'll appeal the inter-county games, and maybe, I think Enda McGinley, who'll be on at 7:30, thinks it's gone to a point now where you just can't trust county boards. They're not doing a good enough job here. It's just a mess. We need to look after this whole thing centrally.
Well, the next thing you're going to have is people saying that there aren't enough bodies centrally to deal with every single issue that's going to arise in the club game in every single county there is. So
Which is a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Football doesn't need it though either. Football is in one of its seminal periods, I would say, where it could go one way or the other. I was reading today. Sean McDermott is in the Ireland squad. I think he's the third choice keeper, is that right?
Christiansen, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know much about this player, and I was looking him up on Wikipedia, and Sean McDermott was also one of the signatories in the Rising, and he took part in the Rising because he thought unless we save nationalism right now, it could be gone forever in Ireland. And Gaelic football is actually in that place at the moment.
That's some superb dot joining, by the way. Well done.
It just came to me, Sean McDermott, who was also a jockey actually. But
on the street.
It's football doesn't need this, and in the sense of the image of the game, which I've never experienced so much negativity towards Gaelic football. A lot of it from hardcore fans of the sport who just don't go anymore because of the way it's gone. And they were maybe some of the parents who I was talking about on the pitch years ago, but they've given up. We don't need to blacken the name anymore because it's in a bad way.
Yeah, and the point Declan Bogue made was that under-20s game, which is one of the more high-profile ones, they're still children really at the end of the day. You know, they're still sort of in that phase, and if parents are looking at this and they're not that far away from senior level and they're seeing their children involved in this kind of stuff, they're going to be like, oh.
Yeah, it's true. You can be accused of scaremongering as well a little bit and get off your high horse, fair enough. But some of the scenes are bad. And Enda McGinley, one of the reasons we're having him on is he did a piece with Declan Bogue, and Enda obviously works as a physiotherapist and he's involved in medical care up north, and he was just saying, like, we're dicing with the potential of a one-punch fatality here, you know? And you think we were talking about Sean Cox last night, who was struck twice, and it's effectively, I don't want to say ruined his life, but not far off it, and that of his family. And you think, well, we just can't. You can't have people throwing punches at each other without fear of great consequences.
Why does this never happen in rugby? Like,
they seem to have stamped it out. And if you're banned in rugby, it seems to be much less likely you're going to get off. Whereas, you know, 10 players are banned in a GAA club match. How many of them have wangled their way through a disciplinary appeal by the time the next match comes around? At least half of them seem to find a way of getting off, you know.
There's a deep-rooted problem with referees as well, and that's in soccer as well. But like the way referees are treated in rugby should be basically the template for everything. I think it's scandalous, absolutely scandalous, what they have to put up with in Gaelic football games. I
must say, I did find growing up. So my main sports were football, soccer, and GAA growing up, and the GAA dressing room was always a more charged atmosphere, because it was for the parish and for your families, and we're up against the lads 2 towns over, and it was like, we're not letting down the town today. Whereas the soccer match I found was more about, well, let's just go, you know, we're all from different places.
Let's go and express ourselves.
Yeah, and there were lads from the other town who'd come to play for your soccer team because it's a better team than the one in their town.
It's a very strangely primal thing.
It's a much more tribal thing.
And when you think about it in terms of that tribal thing shouldn't necessarily exist anymore, given the way that we kind of live our lives cross borders and between towns and commuting here and there. Like it's not something that should be, you know, you would think.
And yet it's one of the few things that is still very tribal, and actually it's a testament to the power of the GAA. It should be a wonderful thing, and it predominantly is. Like, I don't know how many matches go on up and down the country every weekend, and we might see one video every 2 weeks at the moment, which is still a lot.
But it's just the nature of them. Like, if it was 2 or 3 lads engaging in these scraps, you kind of like, it's 2 or 3 lads that need a bit more cop on.
Lads hopping over the walls and everything.
But it's lads hopping over walls. It's these massive all-ins that you see people literally legging it all to one centre point to get involved.
Yeah.
That's a cultural problem.
Yeah.
My big thing with the referee was you'd make sure, as a player, or if you were to manage, make sure to treat him with respect. And secondly, if it is a he, of course, a lot of female refs now as well, make sure to know his name. So just say, Joe. He's going to want you that little bit more.
He's like, do I know this guy?
Yeah.
Do I know him?
But it's somehow disarming.
It is. It's a disarming thing. The Newsround,
with kindness as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. The Newsround is brought to you this evening with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. So, Republic of Ireland had an open training session today. What's going to happen this week, I think, is there was an open training session and lots of players put forward, and then we're not going to hear too much from anybody involved with the team until the match on Saturday. Yeah,
it's pretty much lockdown between now and Saturday at the Aviva, and it was a trimmed down Republic of Ireland squad that trained today ahead of those Nations League games with Denmark and Wales. Martin O'Neill cut his provisional 32-man squad with Greg Cunningham, Alan Judge, Richie Towell, Darrell Horgan, Graham Burke and Ronan Curtis all missing out. Curtis drops down to join the under-21s. The manager also played down suggestions that Premier League Player of the Month Matt Doherty's face doesn't fit within his setup. The Wolves fullback even has been limited to just 3 caps, despite being in the squad since the spring of 2016. Speaking last month, Doherty said his lack of game time in a green jersey was because he felt perhaps his face didn't fit under O'Neill. But with captain Seamus Coleman also missing this week, Doherty may be afforded a first international start. And O'Neill says the prior involvement of Coleman is one of the mitigating factors behind curtailing Doherty's game time.
Matt's been in the squad here now. He has a natural difficulty, obviously, since breaking into the team here, because he's essentially a wing back at this moment. It's the position that he is finding himself in, and it's the position he's most comfortable in as well too. I think he's 26 years of age now, and I think he's maturing into a good player. And I think that not for 1 minute does his face not fit. It's just a matter of playing in the team, and it's very difficult. I just don't actually, because someone is doing well, generally speaking, be difficult for him to take over the role. If we're playing a back 4, as you just mentioned, we've one of the best right backs in Europe playing in that position. And when he was injured at the time, Cyrus Christie came in and stepped in, and you'd have to say Cyrus Christie did very well for us, very well. So this positions on, remarkably, is one of the positions that we're actually quite strong in. There's other positions that we're not strong at all, but this is one here. But in terms of his face not fitting, simply not true.
We'll go through more of what Martin O'Neill was saying on the football show after 9. Myself and Johnny will go through some of the clips, including at one point just being asked outright, if you don't get results in the next 2 games, are you under pressure for your job? And you kind of think, ooh, there's not many professions where you're being asked about losing your job in front of a room full of people very often. It's one of the grim aspects of the football world. James McLean weighed in on the Harry Arter situation.
Yeah, weighing in's probably a bit strong, but yeah, he insists there's no issue with Harry Arter upon the on-loan Cardiff midfielder's return to the fold. Arter, of course, opted to skip the recent games with Wales and Poland after an argument with Roy Keane came to light. McLean was vocal on social media at the time about Arter's decision, but insisted today that the issue has been put to bed, and the Stoke midfielder did concede that Arter's was not a course of action that he'd have taken.
I don't think it's a biggest deal as it's been made out. So what? Someone had a go at someone. Like we're all grown men at the end of the day, deal with, get on with. But the harmony in the squad, I think if you ask the 2 lads as well, it's been good. It's always been good. Yeah, I think it's obviously not ideal. Harry didn't show up the last campaign. I tell Harry myself, I don't agree with that. You'd have to put a gun to my head for me not to show up and play for Ireland. But again, everybody's different. But he's here now, and like I touched on earlier, he's here now. He's a teammate. He's here to play for Ireland, and he's got my back 100% on that.
Meanwhile, the Republic of Ireland.
Not shocked that's James McLean's outlook on arguments.
Yeah, there you go.
I feel like that's how he would generally feel.
I have no problem with Harry Arter, but I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
He just kept saying it. Like, if you listen to the longer clip, that's sort of the vibe. So
yeah.
The Republic of Ireland women's side, they were in friendly action this evening. Colin Bell's side suffered a chastening night in Ostroda, going down 4-0 away to Poland.
John says, until someone is seriously hurt or killed, and that will happen, he says, nothing will change in Gaelic football. Also, there's a prevailing view from counties on their own players that Asher is a lovely lad and that incident is out of character.
But it has happened. Like that piece, as I mentioned yesterday by Dermot Crowley, was in the Sindo a couple weeks ago. Like a guy was killed at a Tyrone underage game in 77, I think it was, or at least in the 70s, and he was a fan sitting in the stands at an underage game and got involved. He didn't get involved in the mill. The mill came at him essentially, and he ended up being kicked to death. And there was nothing made of it then. Like the reporter or the guy who was in charge of the Tyrone County Board at the time, I think it was when Dermot went to him, said that this is the first time since then that he'd actually spoken about it, because there's never actually been any follow-up, and there was barely any follow-up on it at the time in terms of coverage from the wider press.
Sounds like it was deliberately, like, just
hush, keep this on the thing. But
I'd never heard about that.
Yeah, it's a remarkable story. It's well worth seeking out online. I'm sure it's knocking around on the Indo's website. But yeah, a fan literally kicked to death at a game, an underage game in Tyrone in the 70s. It was part of the litany of incidents that came to light that weekend after we, had yet another video thrown our way during the course of the week.
Wow. Okay.
But you'd have figured something would have changed in the intervening 40 odd years.
Yeah, God, that's amazing. I hadn't realised that. We've got Declan Bogue and Enda McGinley on the way in about 10 minutes' time.
Kerry County Committee Chairman Tim Murphy insists there was no outside influence in the picking of Peter Keane's backroom team. Keane was last night ratified as the Kingdom's new senior football manager, succeeding Eamon Fitzmaurice, and was handed a 3-year term. The Carsavine man will be assisted by Donny Buckley, Tommy Griffin, James Foley and Kerry legend Maurice Fitzgerald. But Murphy told Radio Kerry last night that Keane did all the choosing of his own, and he feels they now have the right blend to help guide Kerry back to All-Ireland success.
It certainly is a really good mix of people. Like you say, Peter had James and Tommy from the minors, and he obviously saw a necessity to bring in other individuals in terms of Maurice, having been involved for the past 2 years with Eamon Fitzmaurice, and the level of expertise he'd have brought, the level of knowledge he'd have brought about players and the setup and whatever. And Donny Buckley's credentials are unquestioned. Obviously, he was involved with Kieran Kerry in the past. He was involved with Limerick. And more recently, as we all know, he was involved with Mayo, and has brought a new level of expertise to coaching, both defensively and offensively, I would say. So I think collectively there's no doubt, but it's a really, really strong team.
Meanwhile, the Kilkenny County Board had the shortest conversation of all time last night.
Brian Cody's going to be in charge of the Kilkenny hurlers for a 21st year. He was ratified for 2019 at last night's meeting.
What do they even say at those meetings?
I remember discussing this with a former manager, and I was like, sure, we're having a pint one night.
What's his name, Brian Cody?
No, I've never met Brian Cody, but I was like, I was saying to him, sure, Brian Cody won't, outstay his welcome. He'll like just one of these things, throwaway remarks. And he's like, I don't know, Brian. Pretty much hurling is everything for Brian. Like, I'm not sure he's going to step down at all anytime soon. Yeah. And how long is this going to be?
He must be closing. I think, is Boylan 24 years? Could I have that wrong? I mean, I could well have that wrong. Sean Boylan's record is coming into sight now. I mean, it's still a few years away, but it's doable.
I doubt that's his aspiration.
No, I'm sure.
It's a massive challenge. We're talking about hurling and football being in a seminal place. Kilkenny are
23 years.
23 years is Boylan. Oh, he'll do 23.
Kilkenny are, notwithstanding that Leinster gives them a fair chance of kind of getting to an All-Ireland semi-final sort of thing, they're a fair way off at the moment.
They are in some ways. This year was a good year for them. They won the league, and it's I mean, he doesn't like the word transition being used, but they're in transition.
They don't have the players, they just don't, and it's...
I don't know what's coming through.
Off the top of my head, I don't think they have an awful lot coming through. The players that they brought in this year, I felt in the games against Galway were comfortably superior to them, really, even though they obviously held them one of the games. But and the problems that Richie Hogan has had have really hurt them, even though he didn't have that bad of a year. But what a man, in fairness.
Yeah, no, ridiculous. I mean, did they do a pros and cons list? Pros, 1 billion All-Ireland. So
had I get any younger, Brian?
Rugby at the weekend then?
Yeah, a host of familiar names could be returning to the Ulster side for Saturday's Champions Cup opener with Leicester. Marty Moore, Geordie Murphy, Will Addison, Craig Gilroy and Michael Lowry, great name, all returned to training this week and could be in contention for the Pool 4 clash at Kingspan Stadium. All 5 will be monitored as the week progresses, as will prop Eric O'Sullivan, who suffered a concussion in Friday night's loss to Connacht at the Sports Ground and is following the return to play protocols. On the Munster front, they've registered another scrum half to their Champions Cup squad amid an injury crisis there. Neil Cronin has been added to their 41-man panel at the expense of out-half Bill Johnston. Albie Matthewson's knee injury will continue to be assessed this week, while Conor Murray remains out indefinitely with a neck injury. That only left Duncan Williams as cover for the number 9 jersey ahead of Saturday's trip to Exeter and Sandy Park. Bath, meanwhile, have confirmed that back row Talupe Faletau suffered a broken arm during last week's rugby Premiership defeat to Exeter. The Wales international will be a major doubt for the club's back-to-back pool games with Leinster come December. Faletau is almost certain to miss Wales' November dates with Scotland, Australia, Tonga and South Africa. And it was another good day for Ireland so far, at least at the Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires. Dubliner Nat Wen has qualified for the badminton singles quarterfinals with a perfect record. His 21-4, 21-11 victory over Uriel Canjura Artiga saw him finish top of Group C with 3 wins from 3 matches. Wen, who seeded 3rd at Buenos Aires, will face the 5th seed and Chinese number 1 Shifeng Li in the last 8 tomorrow, while Irish swimmers Mona McSherry and Niamh Coyne are through to tonight's semi-finals of the women's 100 metre breaststroke in Buenos Aires. McSherry won her heat today and Coyne was second in hers. meaning they respectively qualified with the 2nd and 4th fastest times overall. They'll return to those semi-finals at around about 11:15 Irish time. Elsewhere today, Robbie Powell was 8th in his heat of the men's 50-metre freestyle. Lauren Crowley-Walsh, meanwhile, is 7 shots off the lead after the opening round of the women's golf. She shot a 5 over par 75 at the wonderfully named Hurlingham. Italy's Alessia Nobilio hold a 3-shot lead on 2 under par.
I was watching some youth Olympics in the office earlier on. It was a quiet few moments. There was some rock climbing going on.
There's a rock climbing tournament, yeah.
It's good actually.
It's good, great crack. They've got a climbing wall, and they've got to climb the wall in a certain amount of time by going a certain route.
And it's very, very tricky.
Oh, it's completely tricky.
It's not particularly high, but it's particularly tricky.
Yeah, it's angled.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different kind of holes on it, essentially, and they're all obviously talked to the gills with people going up it. So,
like, Johnny's looking at us here as if to say, "You're not selling this." It was actually compelling.
No, I'm just thinking of Bear Grylls.
We were watching a competitor who kept falling down, and you obviously have a certain amount of time, and then you hop back up and go again.
Like a certain song, I get knocked down.
Precisely,
and all that. Yeah.
Well, like with any Olympic viewing, you turn it on, you're like, what is this? And then after an hour, you're saying, oh, she should have done that.
Well, I know. Oh, no, very quickly, Stephen Doyle was saying, what's she doing going for that one? That's not the route.
That's a rookie, yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, there were experts in there fairly quickly.
Would-be rock climbing expert Stephen Doyle.
Stephen Doyle was all over it. Jolyon Lescott did an interview with Graham Hunter. I just saw it on Twitter.
Where's this go?
Well, I haven't heard the interview. But Graham Hunter, the way he kind of videos on selfie mode with the player behind him. Yeah. So he said, coming up my chat with Jolyon Lescott, and he said, watch out, Olympian in 2024. I was like, what? And so he was saying esports is going to be an Olympic sport by 2024, and Jolyon Lescott must be especially good at FIFA or something. I don't know what his chosen sport is. Yeah. I don't even know for esports what sports or what games they're allowing in. Is it all games?
FIFA is one of them. Okay. There's like a role-playing game is another one, and but there's essentially 3 main core games.
Are they all sports games, or will there be like Call of Duty?
No. I think only FIFA is the really only sports one.
Okay, well, Jolyon Lescott's good enough.
Myler's insanely good, isn't he?
Who?
Myler.
David Myler is insanely good, yeah.
Arguably better at esports than he is.
Can't say that, Joe.
Can you not know?
Can't say
he seems to be unbelievable at it, though.
I wouldn't say arguably.
Okay.
Well, you've gone a bit further, Ronan.
Well, Jolyon Lescott seems to be thinking he's going to the Olympics in Paris in 2024.
We see there's going to be some young fella who's about 15 who's probably going to be better than
some cyborg who's there ready to go, yeah. But there you go, look. Right.
Meanwhile,
last story.
Speaking of the Olympics, there have been 3 cities put forward, 3 candidates put forward for the 2026 Olympic Games vote, which will take place in Lausanne on June 23rd. Among them, former host city of Calgary is one. They're going to have a combined Italian bid from Milan, Cortina d'Ampezzo, and Stockholm is in there too. Well, Padraig Harrington's received another prominent endorsement in his bid to become Ryder Cup captain in 2 years' time. Justin Rose, the latest to offer his backing to the 3-time major winner to lead Europe at Whistling Straits. Harrington's been pretty open on this show in particular about his desire to succeed Thomas Bjorn, saying it would provide the necessary continuity. And Rose thinks Harrington will be tailor-made to lead Europe in 2020.
I would say Padraig, for me, would be the front runner. If he doesn't do it this time, then I'm not sure. I mean, because you got to start fitting guys in. Westwood, I mean, Westy is still obviously capable of making a team next time around, I believe. So I think the logical, or so is Padraig. Padraig's been on the leaderboard a bunch this year. So but I would say, 3-time major champion, clearly a European legend. For me, Padraig is the front runner.
There we are, that's our news round done for this evening. Jason Shanahan is watching on Facebook. He says, if I was on a plane about to crash and I had 2 parachutes, I'd give Johnny Ward both.
Well, that's
very generous.
That's a bit like the inverse of Father Jack taking both for himself.
Are me, Richie and Ronan on the plane as well?
What's my cousin's name there? What?
Is that your cousin?
What is his name?
Jason Shanahan.
Jason, if you're ever in a tavern and you see me, come over and I'll...
This is not just a vehicle for you to get free drink off people.
No, I was going to say I'd buy him a drink. There's a lovely thing to say.
We are celebrating the return of the Heineken Champions Cup with a very special show. We're at University Concert Hall this Thursday. It's a sit-down with Ronan O'Gara, Brian O'Driscoll there as well, Keith Wood, Nathan is heading down. It is completely sold out at this stage, but we've got some VIP tickets to give away this evening. You'll get the best seats in the house and a meet and greet with the lads. To be in with a chance of winning, just identify our Champions Cup mystery voice, who was shocked, and this is true actually, we're going to talk to Johnny about this later on. He was shocked that Johnny went to the stands for Linfield Glentoran last night.
It's very new news to me, so I haven't really had too much time to digest it.
It's not the first time he's done it either.
It's very new news to me, so I haven't really had too much time to digest it.
Text your name and answer 53106 for 30 cents, and we'll announce the winner later on in the show. It's an over 18s event only. Visit drinkaware.ie, and that is the latest Off the Ball Roadshow in association with Heineken Rugby Club. We're back with Declan Bogue and Enda Migley.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.